hey, there's some stuff out here that we have no knowledge of, and it's moving in a way that we really can't explain. What is that like?
We never really appreciated it at the time.
Really? Because you're so mission-focused.
We're so mission-focused. And the point when we kind of left our squadron, we left for deployment in 2015. And so this was still happening. It was prior to the point that they started putting that notice out to airmen, the NOTAM out.
We should play the gimbal video. Jamie, will you please pull that up? Because I want you to kind of give us an understanding from your own expertise, like your technical understanding of what we're looking at.
Yeah. So this is
here it
FLIR.
is. Is this so? This is FLIR footage.
Yep. So this is when I say FLIR, this is what I'm referring to. And right in the middle, at the top of the screen, you see IR, infrared. So that's that infrared mode where we're seeing heat right now. We are in black hot. So that means objects that are darker are hotter. So this object right in the middle is putting heat out.
And right now it appears to be rotating. Is that what it was doing there?
Yeah, exactly. So we do see this object rotate. I mean, it looks like a gimbal. That's why it's called it, I think. I didn't name it. But we see the object essentially rotate from what looks like a horizontal position here. Those lines above it represent the horizon, so it's essentially parallel. There it goes.
And it's hard to make out the shape of this thing, but it seems almost like a disc with like a crown on the top and the bottom.
Yeah, kind of like it looks like almost like a little bit of energy coming out from the poles there, if you will. That's kind of how I describe it. I see like a little bit of the dark, heat emanating from there, or the energy, as I call it.
And is there any way from this video, from this equipment, to detect how large this thing is?
There is. So the velocity vector in the middle there can be set to a particular size, and that size correlates to a particular length. So that in a dogfight, if you have, you're behind a guy and you essentially, his wingspan is equal to the length of those two lines on that circle with the lines coming out. You see that? That's the velocity vector. Then you know how far away he is, right? And so it's kind of like an analog thing that's not super relevant like in modern age, but yes, there is. I don't know, however, what that is set to in this one, so I can't like make that calculation for you right now.
So there's nothing that we have as a drone that's capable of moving like that?
So yeah, again, if you just look at one particular case, it's like, all right, so something climbed vertically and proceeded in the opposite direction. Like that's not the sexiest thing in the world. But then let's look back in context and say, okay, we're 350 miles off the coast in protected airspace around an aircraft carrier, with only fighter jets in the air. And then all of a sudden there's a formation of small objects just kind of cruising around, for a period of time that's unknown, performing the least fuel efficient turns possible, right? Like there's no concern for how fuel efficient that turn is. That's like the least efficient way to do a turn. And so how is an object hundreds of miles off the coast, with apparently no concern for fuel, hanging out next to our carrier?
And without the FLIR footage, you would have never been able to see these things.
Correct, yeah.
When you report this, what's the reaction? Like how does that go?
No. Because we were practicing like we play at this point, getting ready for war, we were doing like a formal intel debrief after our flights, right? Pretending like, hey, we intercept these guys and did that, another thing. And so the air crew who recorded it were going down into that room to debrief it. And someone told me like, hey, your friend there got something interesting on the FLIR this time. Maybe you should go take a look or something. So, because I had already landed, my gear's off, and so waiting to debrief essentially. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll go check it out. So I walk down there, it's like the other side of the ship. Go in. It's a classified space. All the intel folk are in there. And they're queuing up the video, the tapes, to watch the FLIR footage. And here's an interesting thing too, right? So the situational awareness page, that screen I told you about with the radar data, that's kind of in a screen that's, chest level. And then there's a screen here, eye level on either side. And if you're we put the FLIR here, a standard procedure, and the situational awareness page down here. And then we'll have a radar up here or any of our other systems. if you record this screen with the FLIR, you record the SA page automatically. Like it's part of the same tape.
When you're watching the FLIR footage and you're looking at the situational awareness page and you're seeing these objects, you've already had experiences with these things by then?
So the gimbal
with
was new.
something.
Yeah, we hadn't seen the gimbal yet, though.
So this is different than the other objects that you've seen.
Yeah. So the gimbal object at this time...
What is a gimbal, by the way?
A spinning top, that's what I think of, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And essentially, and that induces a force that wants to keep it upright, essentially, right? So as it's spinning, you poke it, and it kind of goes back to the center. Again, I don't know where the names came from, but...
Okay. So when everyone is observing this, how many people are in the room with you when this is going down?
Yeah, there's maybe like 15 or so. A lot of intel people, a handful of aviators, and then, of course, the air crew.
What's the reaction?
Everyone just kind of looking around at each other, just kind of like, holy shit. Like, there was no like, oh, that's prosaic or that's...
Right.
There was no conclusions drawn, but everyone just kind of like had no idea what it was.
And the people that were in there, had they also used this upgraded equipment so they were all aware that there was something going on out there? Like this is a narrative that's being discussed?
All the aviators, yeah.
So everyone kind of knows that you're not alone out there.
It's a good question. I don't even know how many of the intel folks knew at this point, but I mean, at least our squadron intel, guy did, and I know a handful of others, but I honestly don't know how many of the intel folks were aware at this point.
Is there a discussion about, how much of this can you talk about openly? Is everyone going, huh? Like, what is it like?
Yeah, pretty much that, right? And kind of just waiting for someone to provide some, leadership on this. So, like, what the fuck?
What leadership is available if an alien spacecraft shows up?
Well, apparently they called the admiral, right? So they're like, let's see what the admiral thinks. And so I kind of slowly walked into the shadows so no one kicked me out,
Right? Because you want to know.
Yeah, I want to see what his reaction at least was,